Story by Premchand. Forgiveness. Muslims had ruled over the land of Spain for several centuries. Churches were being replaced by mosques, and the sound of church bells had given way to the call of the azan. In Granada and Alhambra, grand palaces had been erected that seemed to mock the fleeting nature of time, and even their ruins today offer a glimpse of their former glory. Distinguished Christian men and women were abandoning the sanctuary of Christ to embrace Islamic brotherhood, and historians to this day marvel at how any trace of Christianity managed to survive there. Among the Christian leaders who refused to bow before the Muslims and dreamt of establishing self-rule in their land was a merchant named Dor. Dodd was both learned and courageous. He prevented Islam from gaining a foothold in his region. Poor and oppressed Christian rebels from other parts of the country would seek refuge with him, and he generously supported them. The Muslims regarded Dodd with suspicion. Unable to overcome him through religious persuasion, they sought to subdue him with force, but Dodd never directly confronted them. Instead, whenever he heard of Christians converting to Islam, he would swiftly intervene, urging them with reason and humility to remain steadfast in their faith. Eventually, the Muslims encircled his area and prepared to capture him. Armies surrounded his territory, forcing Dodd to flee with his family to save his life. Dodd fled his home and arrived in Granada, the Islamic capital of that time. There, he lived a secluded life, awaiting better days. The Muslim spies made great efforts to locate him, offering large rewards for his capture, but Dodd remained elusive. One day, weary of isolation, Dodd went for a walk in a garden in Granada. Evening had fallen. Muslims, clad in flowing robes, their heads wrapped in large turbans, and swords hanging from their waists, strolled along the paths. Women in white veils, wearing embroidered shoes, sat on benches and chairs. Dodd lay apart on the green grass, pondering, when will the day come when our homeland is freed from the clutches of these oppressors? He envisioned a past when Christian men and women must have walked these same paths, filling the place with their lively conversations. Suddenly, a young Muslim man approached Dodd and sat beside him. Casting a disdainful glance from head to toe, he asked, "Has your heart still not been illuminated by the light of Islam?" Dodd solemnly replied, "The light of Islam may illuminate mountain peaks, but it cannot penetrate dark valleys." The young Muslim, whose name was Jamal, was incensed by this remark and retorted sharply, "What do you mean by this?" Dodd explained, "I mean that among Christians, those in high positions may turn to Islam out of greed for lands and titles or fear of royal punishment. But for the weak and destitute Christians, Islam does not offer that heavenly salvation which they find in the embrace of Christ. Islam has been spread by the sword, not by service." Jamal, stung by the insult to his faith, responded heatedly, "That is entirely false. The strength of Islam lies in its internal brotherhood and equality, not in the sword." Dodd countered, "Islam has spilled so much blood in the name of religion that all its mosques could drown in it." Jamal replied, "The sword has always been the protector of truth." Dodd remained unfazed and said, "What needs the support of the sword cannot be the truth." Jamal, brimming with ethnic pride, declared, "As long as there are worshippers of falsehood, the sword will remain necessary." Dodd calmly replied, "Truth that depends on the sword is itself false." Furious, Jamal placed his hand on his sword hilt and swore, "By God, if you were not unarmed, I would have shown you what it means to insult Islam." Dodd drew out a dagger hidden in his chest and said, "No, I am not unarmed. The day I place my trust in Muslims, I will cease to be a Christian. Fulfill your wish." Both drew their weapons and attacked each other. Jamal's heavy sword was no match for Dodd's lighter dagger. The dagger struck like the hood of a serpent, swift and deadly, while the sword moved like waves, crashing but ineffective. After a brief skirmish, Dodd's dagger pierced Jamal's chest, and the young man fell to the ground. As Jamal fell, people rushed in from all sides, trying to surround Dodd. Sensing danger, he fled for his life. Wherever he turned, the garden wall blocked his path. The wall was high, and scaling it seemed impossible. It was a battle of life and death. There was no place to hide, and the bloodlust of the Arabs grew fiercer with every passing moment. This was not merely an attempt to punish a criminal, it was revenge for a national insult. How dare a vanquished Christian raise his hand against an Arab? What blasphemy! Like a squirrel pursued by hounds, darting left and right, trying repeatedly to climb a tree but falling from exhaustion, Dodd's plight was similar. Breathless and with leaden feet, he often thought of charging his pursuers head-on and selling his life dearly. But the sheer number of enemies disheartened him. "Catch him, don't let him escape," echoed through the air. Sometimes his pursuers came so close it seemed the end was near, yet a quick turn or feint would save him from the thirsty swords. Gradually, Dor began to find a strange thrill in this deadly chase. Certain that he would not survive, he started enjoying the game of eluding his pursuers. Escaping a blow no longer brought him relief for sparing his life. Instead, it delighted him to outwit his killers. Suddenly, Dor noticed a part of the garden wall that was slightly lower. This sight infused new energy into his tired body. His veins surged with fresh vigor. He ran like a deer toward the spot and, with a leap, crossed to the other side. Life and death had been separated by a single step. Behind him was death, ahead lay the vast expanse of life. As far as the eye could see, there were only bushes and shrubs. The ground was rocky and uneven, strewn with boulders. Dor hid beneath one of these rocks. In no time, his pursuers arrived and began searching through the bushes, trees, pits, and under rocks. One Arab climbed onto the very rock under which Dodd was hiding. Dodd's heart pounded. Was this the end? Would this man peer below and end his life? At that moment, Dodd's life depended on sheer chance. He held his breath, remaining utterly still. One glance could decide his fate. How close life and death were. But the Arabs were in too much haste to be thorough. They quickly moved on, intent on catching their prey. Dodd was spared. Night fell. Stars appeared in the sky, and along with them, Dor emerged from his hiding spot. However, the commotion around him had not ceased. Groups of pursuers roamed the bushes with torches in hand, and guards were stationed at every exit. There was no way out. Standing beneath a tree, Dor contemplated how he might save his life. Not that he feared death, he had experienced all the joys and sorrows of life. If he desired to live, it was only to witness the outcome of this struggle. Would his countrymen lose heart, or would they persist in their fight with indomitable courage? When the night deepened and the fervor of his enemies seemed to wane slightly, Dor whispered a prayer and stepped out of the bushes. He moved cautiously, staying hidden behind trees and avoiding detection, heading toward the settlement. Desolation offers no cover, the crowds of a bustling town provide true concealment. For some distance, Dor encountered no obstacles. The forest sheltered him, but when he left the uneven terrain for flatter ground, an Arab spotted him and shouted, "Dor, run! The murderer is escaping!" The cry rang out, and in an instant, the Arabs resumed their pursuit. Ahead, there was no sign of habitation, only a faint glimmer of a light in the distance. Desperately, Dor made for the light, running as if it were his salvation. The Arabs fell behind, their torchlight dimming. Only the stars seemed to accompany Dor on his frantic flight. At last, he reached the source of the light, a small thatched hut. An elderly Arab sat on the ground, reading the Quran by the dim glow of an oil lamp. Exhausted, Dor collapsed at the threshold, unable to go further. The old man looked up and asked, "Who are you?" Dor replied, "A poor Christian. I am in grave trouble. Only your refuge can save my life." The Arab reassured him, "May God help you. What trouble are you in?" Dor hesitated. "I fear that if I tell you, you too may thirst for my blood." The Arab said firmly, "You have come under my protection. You have nothing to fear from me. We Muslims never harm those who seek our shelter." Dor confessed, "I have killed a young Muslim man." The old Arab's face twisted in anger. "What was his name?" "His name was Jamal," Dor answered. The Arab clutched his head and sank to the ground. His eyes turned red, veins bulged on his neck, and his face radiated an otherworldly intensity. His nostrils flared as if he were waging a fierce internal battle, striving to suppress his emotions with all his might. For several minutes, he sat staring at the ground in this agitated state. Finally, with a choked voice, he said, No. I must protect my guest." "Ah, you wretch! Do you know who I am? I am the unfortunate father of the young man you so mercilessly killed. Do you realize the enormity of your crime? You have erased the very legacy of my lineage. Snuffed out the light of my house. Ah, Jamal was my only son. All my hopes rested on him. He was the light of my eyes, the support of my old age, the foundation of my life, the very soul of my frail body. Only just now, I laid him to rest in his grave. Ah, my lion now sleeps beneath the soil. There was no one as brave, as devout, or as handsome as him in our tribe. You heartless murderer, how could you strike him down without a trace of pity? Your stone heart felt no remorse. Do you know how much anger I feel toward you at this moment? My hands itch to seize your neck and squeeze it until your tongue lolls out and your eyes pop like coins. But no, you have sought my refuge, and duty binds my hands. For our Prophet himself has commanded that one must not harm those who come under their protection. I cannot defy the Prophet's teachings and ruin my afterlife. You have ruined this world for me. Shall I ruin my faith as well? No, I will endure. It is hard, but I will endure so that I may stand before the Prophet without shame. Come, enter my house. If the pursuers see you, no amount of pleading will save your life. You do not understand, Arabs never forgive blood. With these words, the old man took Daud by the hand and led him into his house, hiding him in a small room. Just as he stepped outside, a group of Arabs arrived at his door. One of them asked, Sheikh Hassan, did you see someone running this way? Yes, I did, he replied. Why didn't you capture him? He's Jamal's murderer. I let him go, knowing this. What, by God, what have you done? When Jamal holds us accountable on the day of judgment, what will we say? Tell him that his father forgave his killer. An Arab never forgives blood. That is your concern. Do not burden me with it. The Arabs, unwilling to argue further with Sheikh Hassan, resumed their search for the murderer. Hassan returned to his mat and began reading the Quran again, but his heart was not in it. The Arab custom of avenging blood was deeply ingrained. Rivers of blood had flowed to settle such scores, entire tribes had perished, cities had been left desolate. Overcoming this instinct seemed nearly impossible for Sheikh Hassan. Again and again, the image of his beloved son flashed before his eyes, and he felt a burning urge to quench his fury with Daud's blood. Finally, unable to restrain himself, Sheikh Hassan drew his sword and crept silently to the door of the room where Daud was hiding. Concealing the sword in his cloak, he opened the door cautiously. Daud, who had been pacing the room, immediately sensed the old man's wrath. Sympathy stirred within him. He thought, this is not a fault of religion or tribe, it is human nature. If someone had killed my son, perhaps I too would thirst for their blood. The Arab said, Daud, do you know the pain of losing a son? Daud replied, I have not experienced it, but I can imagine. If my death could lessen even a fraction of your sorrow, take it. Here is my head. I willingly offer it to you. Surely you've heard the name Daud? The son of Peter? Yes, I am that unfortunate Daud. I am not only the killer of your son but an enemy of Islam. By taking my life, you will not only avenge Jamal's death but also render true service to your religion and your people. Sheikh Hassan gravely replied, Daud, I forgive you. I know that Muslims have inflicted great suffering on Christians, committed terrible atrocities against them, and robbed them of their freedom. But that is the fault of Muslims, not of Islam. Pride in victory has clouded the judgment of Muslims. Our holy Prophet did not teach us the ways we follow today. He was the supreme ideal of forgiveness and compassion. I will not tarnish Islam's name. Take my camel and flee as far as you can tonight. Do not stop for even a moment. If the Arabs catch your scent, they will not spare your life. Go, and may God protect you. Pray for Sheikh Hassan and his son Jamal. Daud escaped safely to his home, but he was no longer the same Daud who had sought to eradicate Islam. His thoughts had undergone a profound transformation. He now respected Muslims and spoke of Islam with reverence. The story ends here. How did you like it? Please comment, like, or dislike. Share with your friends. Subscribe to the channel. Thank you.